Hey everybody, George once again, and I'm excited. Want to introduce real quickly, just introduce yourself and tell us one thing that maybe not a lot of people know that you're really passionate about.
Well, thanks, George, for having me. So my name is Yannick Provencher. Kind of hard name to say. I'm from Quebec City. My first language is French, so I always translate my name. In the real pronunciation is Provencher, but you can say Provencher, no problem. If you ever have to say my name. But yeah, different things about me, what I'm passionate about. I'm kind of really specific in that I'm really passionate when it comes to my personal life to skiing in the winter and go-kart racing in the summer. I always stays the answer because it's really something I do a lot and I do enjoy very much. In terms of more professionally, I'm an IO psychology advisor at Bucketlist, and a lot of the things that I do is the thought leadership about recognition and just finding out the evidence of why recognition work and why, in other words, it's so amazing. So a lot of measurement, and another of my passion is kind of measuring things that are hard to directly observe or directly see, and these are a lot of things that involve our organizational health and safety. So, like feeling valued, burnout, stress, engagement, all these things that you cannot measure with a ruler or a specific metric. You kind of have need surveys, focus group, interviews. So I'm kind of really passionate about that as well. And yeah, I'm also have a master's in industrial and organizational psychology. So all my research is focused on organizational health and safety. And yeah, I'm also a PhD candidate. So I'm really happy to be here and having a conversation with you, George.
Awesome. That's incredible. Just a few weeks ago, you talked about go-karts, and I love racing. We have the Indy 500, which is kind of the spectacle
Oh,
of all
amazing.
sports racing. It was incredible. So as we talk about today, we've been diving into the future of work is human. I want to ask you, just kind of finish that sentence for me, if you would. The future of work is human when?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's human when we work together. And that's especially important in the age of AI because we kind of tend to forget the human part. But if you look back, I think as a species, we always did a lot of good work and evolved really well by cooperating, like working together through cooperation instead of working against each other. I think that's when the human progress kind of we progress and are the most successful as humans. So I think keeping that in mind as AI is rising up, that instead of seeing AI as replacing us, more keeping the human centered in there and making sure that relationships we build, that recognition that we give, stay human in a way that we can still be successful to the most of our potential. So that's how I would say it, working together, especially in the rise of AI.
Yeah. One of the things when it comes to recognition, Yannick, is that a lot of companies at times, organizations, you'll see this huge gap. We understand what it means to appreciate someone and how different that is from recognition, right? And recognizing someone for the work that they're doing. And there's this huge gap with a lot of organization when it comes to recognition. As much as they love it, very few of them really connect it directly to their business performance. What are some things that really separates impactful recognition strategies from a surface level? I like to say strategy versus program, but a lot of people say programs in there. But what's the separation when it comes to those things?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good question here. And I do work with a lot of different customers at Bucketlist, and some of them do that really well. Others struggle more, like you said, keeping more the surface levels. And the things that you really see from a very, very good organization when it comes to connecting to business performance and going beyond the surface levels is they really built an infrastructure around recognition and a system around it. And and by that is they have a process to do it. And what you typically see in those organizations is they really have two different things that they do that other organizations don't do as much. And the first thing is they ensure that the recognition that's been given in their company and so on comes from the leadership, top down, comes from their vision and values. So the organizational values that are set by the organization, the culture they want to build, because recognition is really powerful. So if you encourage, so if you recognize someone, it will reinforce and encourage the behavior. So you want to make sure that the behavior you encourage is actually something that you want in your organization and that's really valued. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to make sure that that's specific and the employees are clear about that. And then have a process that we really value when you recognize people around different things. An example could be kindness, right? Recognize around kindness, show different things around that. That's something that could be it. Another one, I would say, they ensure that the recognition that's happening throughout the organization is visible, that everyone can see it in a way. And if you use a platform or you have a good recognition program, that's something that you can do really well. But there's still some problems that arise as well for some specific organization. And the customers that we have that is doing an amazing job of that is some of the jobs, like in construction or frontline or in healthcare settings, the employees don't necessarily have the time to log in and see all the recognition that are on the platform or in a specific or in their specific recognition program. So what they did is they use our technology, they use the platform, the feed, and all the recognition that was given. They printed them out. And what they did is they put that in the break rooms and things like that in their organization. So the people on their breaks and stuff could see all the cool recognition that was happening in their organization, but also not necessarily at their location, but in other departments, in other location, and just celebrating the wins across the company. I think it was a very good way they did that to make it more visible to their employees. And finally, and that one is really close to my heart, is the measurement of it all. They ensure that they track the effectiveness of their program, the ROI of the recognition that happens. So does the recognition that we give, does the frequency, does the quality of the recognition that's being given across our organization influence the metric that matters to us? And oftentimes those are pretty similar across organization, but it can be engagement, turnover intention, reducing those, turnover, reducing stress, increasing satisfaction, and so on, because these are directly tied to performance. And if you have their performance metric, they also tie that to performance metrics.
Yeah, that's important, really. When you talk about, when I think about recognition and I look at organizations that really have embrace what it means to have a meaningful employee recognition, I'm thinking about a time in my career when I had retail stores and employees on my team that I thought I was given the correct recognition. And some of the mistakes that I made earlier on and the ignorance of it was not tying those to the business strategies,
Exactly.
understanding the language of employees. And what I mean by that is understanding what how George receives recognition. Is he a verbal? Is he someone who loves the audience? Does he want to have it in front of is it just email? Is it something that we put on our board, as you're mentioning? How does meaningful employee recognition influence other business impacts? You talk about one of the key things that everybody runs to when it comes to ROI. What's the ROI? What's your KPI on those things? Retention is always there. But when people are engaged, when people are appreciated, they're more likely to stay with the organization. So what are some of the other meaningful recognition influences besides recognition and engagement and even productivity? And I think of this as overall culture in today's workplace.
Yeah, so recognition will shape your culture. And one of the cool things that I love about my job as well is I get to track those. I get to see how effective recognition is across the board, especially that recognition that is done really well. And the metrics are consistent across the board. We see that across all industries that we measure. You can see that also in external research, but even the research we do with our own customers, we see it. So in terms of impact and ROI, we see that if you recognize employees more often and you also recognize them with higher quality of recognition, and I can dive more into it later as well, they're 4 times more likely to be engaged and 6 times less likely to think about leaving. And also there's a huge impact on reducing burnout and reducing stress. These are things that we consistently see. But yeah, it's really, really, really impactful. And the reason why it works is not necessarily because it's a direct impact. So recognition is the thing that comes first. We always call it like a leading indicator. So you were talking about how you give recognition and all these things and going to other metrics other than performance and let's say satisfaction or engagement, but it doesn't directly typically impact these metrics. First, it impacts things like belonging, impacts things like feeling valued, feeling part of the group. And that's the interesting component. That's the thing that recognition impacts is first. And that is why it works so well. Because when you feel valued, when you feel good about yourself, when you feel competent in the work that you do, when you feel you're appreciated at the work, by your peers and your coworkers and your leaders, then that motivates you to work harder, to be more engaged. And that's what we see. You become more engaged, you become more satisfied, and that impacts your performance in the long run.
Yeah, I love that you say that. Ben made a statement a while back, and something that I've been repeating over and over and over again is that humanity is now the true premium.
Yeah,
And the value that people see when I hear from employees, what I'm hearing is they want to be seen, they want to be valued, they want to feel safe, right? We talk about the belonging aspect, but also the
yeah,
foundation of
psychosocial
all those
safety.
things
Yeah,
is being able to know that I can trust my leaders and this organization where there's psychological safety at that as well. And a lot of times where most people go wrong is recognition is treated as a program, and culture is treated as a slogan, and performance is treated as a metrics. And it's really, how do we tie all these things together where culture, performance, and recognition is a true framework within the organization? As I mentioned that, I'm thinking about something that I really wanted to ask you, so I'm gonna ask it now because I think it's a great time. I don't want to use the word mistake as if that's like everyone's making mistakes, because sometimes it's just we don't know, or we haven't even thought outside of the box that we've been given. But what are
yeah.
some of those concerns, mistakes, in the box things that leaders make when trying to recognize employees? And how can, and I'll add a second question on, how can we as people create recognition that feels authentic and motivating without an organization say we're implementing Bucketlist? How can you go beyond, hey, we have this great recognition software, but it's really who we are, it's what we do? How can it be more authentic?
Yeah, I'll start with the mistake aspect, and that's a really good question. I get asked that question like a lot, and I feel like I come up with a different answer all the times. But I think what I want to focus on really in terms of mistake, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of a trap that we often get ourselves into as leaders and as we build a recognition program, is one of the first and most important things that we do to measure the success of a program is we want to ensure that recognition, that people across the organization recognize each other, and there's a frequency that happens. Like recognition frequency is present in your organization. So the more you recognize others in your organization, the better your recognition program is. And that's true to some extent because that will have a great impact on all the outcomes that we discuss, like performance, turnover, intention, engagement, and so on. But it's also a trap that if you focus only on this, you will miss on the biggest piece that affects, that makes recognition like a superpower, and that is recognition quality. That means it's recognition that is authentic, that feels fair, that is personalized, specific, and that is timely, that happens. And if you focus too much on the frequency, you tend to kind of ignore the quality, right? I like, just as an example, let's say I want to provide you recognition. And I'll be honest here, I'm enjoying the conversation with you right now. I think you're doing a really good job explaining the question to me. And I think you're making me comfortable in this fire chat, and I have a great time. So thank you for that. And I do appreciate it. I mean, that's giving recognition in a way, and I mean it when I say that. That's giving recognition that I'm kind of specific towards the behavior that I'm giving to you. But instead, if I just told you, hey, George, thanks for coming to the meeting today, I appreciate it. Does that feel like, did you feel anything from me saying that? Probably not as much than me saying that, like, you're making me comfortable being here. Because I actually meant it and focused on the exact behavior that you did instead of just saying, oh, cool, you showed up, right? Which is kind of an expected behavior in the organization or whatsoever. So I think that's the most important thing. Focus on the quality as well. So make sure frequency is there, but also ensure that the recognition that's being given across your organization is of high quality. And that's when you see the biggest impact. If you compare customers with lower quality or higher quality, that's where we see the biggest difference.
Yeah. That's amazing. I want to tap and maybe end it on this conversation, because I want to go back to, as the future work is human, some of the human qualities. You mentioned the word belonging, and it kind of triggered just kind of a reminder. And again, for those who have heard this before, I'll repeat it. For those who are new, it's great for you to hear it. But we define psychological or belonging, the defining moment of psychological belonging, defining it as I feel accepted, respected, and appreciated at work by my direct leader. And when we ask that question, there's some research as well. I want to get kind of your comments on this and tying this together. When we asked that question, the employees who said, I feel accepted, respected, and appreciated was 3.4 more times to be happy with their current job. They were 7 times more likely to recommend their employer as a great place to work. And so there's this connection, the impact, if you will, on belonging, the impact on being human at work. And there's a lot of guardrails that a lot of leaders sometimes will put up where this is business, this is nothing personal. How would you encourage our HR professionals and leaders who are watching right now, as a takeaway, the importance of humanity at work, where you're creating psychological safety, you're creating that psychological belonging where people feel accepted, respected, and appreciated? How is that so valuable, and how would you encourage them to treat that not just as a program, but actually aligning it with their core values at work?
Yeah, a very great question. I also have a good story based on that as well. So at the end of the day, we're all social beings, right? And the reason, like I said, I think before, why recognition works so well, is because we're human. It goes back to the social connection we make, the trust that it builds, being empathetic toward each other, being kind toward each other, and all these things. So like I said, it doesn't directly, let's say, influence performance, but it's that pathway. It makes you feel that you're part, you feel that you belong, and things like that. And a good example how you can implement that in your organization, and it going back to the conversation that we have as well with tying back to your organizational values, make some of your values really human. So one of our customer, what they did as well was really cool, is they really value kindness in their organization. So what they did is they published a post on the Bucketlist platform where they said that we really encourage you to recognize others in the company around things that they do that are kind to you, and put the word kindness in your recognition, and even upload a photo if you want of it, so we can share that with all our group. And it really like increase the participation of the recognition program a lot. And they also, if you put kindness in there, they would take part in a giveaway of like in a draw or something. And that was really a nice example, kind of showcasing that it's easier than you think to make it human. It's easier than you think to take recognition and just make it something that we can all be social about and bond together with. And so it's the little things like that we tend to forget, but it's really impactful. And that's kind of why the impact is so big that you see in from the result also we just discussed.
Yeah, I love it. This has been a great conversation about employee recognition that really drives business results. Where can people learn more, follow you, connect with you, if you will?
Yeah, they can reach out on LinkedIn. I think I can upload my, or you will upload my LinkedIn in the chat. We might have a QR code as well. So you can definitely reach out to me. You can also reach out to my coworker, amazing coworker, Becca. I think she'll be on the call as well. She's on the call as well here. So yeah, you can either reach out to me or her. And yeah, feel free to DM me as well on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to respond.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Another great session.